is day 3 here at Starcast 2 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's the big day. It is the day of Double or Nothing from AEW. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Hudson, joined by my broadcast colleague, Mark Madden. And Mark, this is a huge day for professional wrestling, but we've got a big day here at Starcast.
No question, right here at Caesars Palace on Fight TV, Booker T's Hall of Fame podcast. And Scott, let me do it one time for old time's sake.
Oh boy.
Spin-a-Rooney, spin-a-Rooney, spin-a-Rooney. And that said, Harlem Heat, one of the all-time greatest tag teams. Booker T, a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. They just don't come much better than Booker T.
Booker T will be here with his Hall of Fame podcast partner, Brad Gilmore. Booker T got his start there in Texas and Houston. Started with us, not with you, but with us.
Global Wrestling.
The Global Wrestling Federation back on ESPN back in, let's just say, the early 90s, maybe.
A long time ago, Scott. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and he has hit the pinnacle, as Mark said, a 2-time Hall of Famer and a 5-time World Heavyweight Champion. But the story from the Global Wrestling Federation to being a 2-time Hall of Famer, that's an incredible journey for Booker T.
Honestly, having seen Booker in Global and then having seen him early in his WCW days, I thought he was destined for stardom from the moment I laid eyes. I think it was that obvious. He and his brother Stevie Ray debuted in WCW with a rather regrettable gimmick that never got on TV, and for good reason. But Booker T, to use a cliche, is a natural. Yeah. You could spot right away how good it'd be, and then he fulfilled that promise.
There will be questions and answers here on this portion of Starcast 2, and I'm looking forward to the questions or addressing the old invasion storyline with Buff Bagwell on that Raw in Tacoma, Washington, with Arn Anderson and I at the broadcast position. Lots of unanswered questions about that night.
Well then, Scott, let's get to the Q, let's get to the A, let's get to the podcast.
Would you please welcome, as he makes his way to the stage here at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, the host of Booker T's Hall of Fame podcast. Here he is, Brad Gilmore.
Yes. How y'all doing? Good, good. Hey, we're so excited to be here in Las Vegas, Nevada at Caesars Palace here on Fight TV to bring you a really special edition of the Hall of Fame podcast. Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but Booker T is not a 1-time, but he's a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. And I said, you know what, Book? We got to go out to Las Vegas. We got to be a part of Starcast so we can make our presence felt. Let everybody know how we do it in Houston, Texas. So without further ado, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to bring out the man himself. Y'all make some noise for the 35-time wrestling champion, the 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. Y'all make some noise for my broadcast partner, the legend, Booker T.
What up, y'all? I'm so glad to be here right now. As far as Hall of Fame go, guys, Hall of Fame is something brand new, and I want to give my man Brad Gilmore here all the credit because he came up with the name Hall of Fame.
Well, you kind of got into the Hall of Fame twice, so it's kind of an easy one to come up with.
But this weekend is something, like Brad said, it's something that we could not be a part of because this is historic. AEW's first show, first big event like this in Las Vegas and Caesars Palace, MGM Grand. This is huge for wrestling. Back on TNT as well. So
what does that mean though for you? You know, I mean, because you were the king of SmackDown, of course, but you were royalty over there on the Turner and on TNT. What does it mean for you for wrestling to be back? I mean, obviously, you're still with the WWE. You're a Hall of Famer 2 times over with the WWE. But for wrestling to make a comeback, not just in any way, not like on any other format, but back home, Atlanta, GA, TNT.
Yeah. I tell you, for Jimmy Hart, I mean, he for a while he was producing Saturday night television on TBS, and it was so awesome. For me to be the television champion back then, because he gave me the opportunity to go out every Saturday night on TBS, TNT broadcasting, and do my thing. And I did it for so long, it actually made me a star. And to see now wrestling back on TNT, it's huge. It's huge, not just for TNT. It's huge for the wrestling business in general. It's huge for the wrestling fan that's going to actually be able to see up close and personal wrestling from a totally different perspective. And I think that's what, I mean, you look at New Japan Wrestling. When people watch New Japan Wrestling, they know they're going to see something totally different. They watch the pageantry. They watch these guys come out and everything looks a little bit different than it does over here. Now we're going to get a chance to see something like that all over again, little bit more than 20 years later. That's pretty awesome.
I mean, and it's crazy to me that it's all kind of headed up, or is the brainchild of several people, but chief among them, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, when you were in TNA, you came back to the WWE. You came back at the Royal Rumble 2011, packed house. People were excited to see you, and you came back, and the first program you wanted, the one you requested, was with Cody Rhodes. What did you see in him? I know that you've been longtime friends with his father, Dusty, with Goldust, his brother. Y'all were tag team champions together. But why was Cody the guy you wanted to come back and work a program?
I mean, let's talk about Dusty first. Dusty, a great wrestler, of course, a great mind for the business, a great promoter, a great friend as well. And I remember Dusty telling me one time, I went out and wrestled and I came back through the curtain and I was like first match, and Dusty said, they won't put you on first no more. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate that, and that totally inspired me to be who I. Dusty used to call me not Booker T, but he used to call me T-Book. And he was the only person that ever called me T-Book, and I loved it. I loved that more than anything. And then me and Goldust, Dustin Rhodes. My first pay-per-view was with Dustin Rhodes back in Houston, Texas, War Games. And
that was the legendary match with the Shockmaster.
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah, heck yeah. But we became great friends from that point on, and we were always tight, and then became, even greater friends in WWE as Booker T and Goldust. And we set ablaze the WWE. I mean, that tag team right there was such an odd couple, but at the end of the day, man, when we finally broke up, people cried, man. It was like, man, no, don't cry, don't break up, So it was so awesome. But and then Cody, man, me and Cody, he just, an extension, the family. I think he was one of the ones I felt like I had to, bring him in as well, as a part of my family, and to be able to go out and perform with them, as far as a little bit of, of a rub from someone who had been there, and see if that would catapult him to, main event and championship status. And we had a hell of a run. If you guys remember Booker T and Cody Rhodes' run, it was actually a hell of a run. We had a great time. We had some great matches, and it didn't work out for him there. But you look what he's done after he left. That's what Cody's going to be measured, I think, at the end of his career. At the end of the day, Cody's going to be measured as far as what he went out there and did on his own, going to Japan, going around the world, honing his craft, finding out exactly who he is. And now we see who Cody Rhodes really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the brainchild amongst almost everything that we're going to see this weekend. Tonight, Double or Nothing. But when Cody Rhodes was real young, you saw something in him. That's why you wanted to work with him, not just because of his family lineage. You knew that when you got in the ring that he was somebody, right?
I mean, if you couldn't see the kid had something, I got a wrestling school. You know that. You one of my commentators.
Yeah, I've been there before.
And with young people, sometimes you got to know how to bring it out of them. Sometimes with young people, they know how to do stuff that they don't even know themselves, and you got to test them and say, "Hey, try this," or try that. But you got to put them in position to succeed more than anything. And I think with Cody, it's always that thing. Well, we're not sure what to do with you. If the guy got talent, and me personally, I saw, a diamond in the rough. I just saw something that needed to be polished. I saw something that needed to be pushed more than anything with Cody Rhodes, and it didn't happen for him. It just didn't happen for him the way he wanted it to happen. And the way he wanted it to happen is, the image that we see right now, the blonde hair, just like his dad,
Just like his brother.
Yeah, just like his brother, wearing a nice suit, just like me. That's where he got that from, and going out there and being able to carve his own niche, blaze his own path in professional wrestling, and that's what the wrestling business. That's what the wrestling business has always been. The Macho Man Savages, of the world. No one, carved that path for him. The Rickety Dragon Steamboats of the world. No one, made that up for him. The Rowdy Roddy Pipers of the world, the Hulk Hogans of the. These guys pretty much went out there and carved their own niche. And the company say, "Hey, I like that. I'm gonna go with that." That's the way it used to be. It wasn't about, trying to go in the laboratory and try to, mix up something, special and see exactly if we can make this hybrid and put it out there. It wasn't like that. We had a chance to go out there and create and make our own destinies, fail, at our own risk, not someone else's. And I think that's what made, the wrestler of the past. No one could beat Booker T. No one could make me who I was. No one could create, my moves for me. I had to do that myself, and to have someone like Cody say, "Hey, I'm willing to take a risk on myself, but I'm willing to fail at the same time." That takes a lot of courage. I got a saying, that if you're 100% about something, you speak up 100% of the time. If you're 99%, you keep your mouth shut. And right now, I thought Cody might have felt like he was 100% on banking on himself.
Oh, he was 100% on it. And I remember when he left the WWE, he was doing the Stardust thing. He left WWE, and then he had that list, right? He had the list of this. I want to wrestle Kurt Angle. I want to do the Streamers thing. I just remember a couple of things that were on that list, and he checked every box. Never on that list, though, was I'm going to start my own promotion with a billionaire family and then put on Double or Nothing. And never did I think that there was going to be another company that presented a new level of excitement, right? And I never would have thought that we would have had the opportunity to be here in Las Vegas. And I'm looking in the front row, I see a Kylie Ray shirt. And to see Kylie Ray on a massive billboard promoting Double or Nothing, she's going to be in one of the marquee matches on there. You talk about someone who is a diamond in the rough like Cody Rhodes. You saw something in Cody Rhodes when you wrestled him. That's why you requested that program. When Kylie Ray came in to Reality of Wrestling, which is where she trained under the Booker T learning tree, the very first night that she was in the company, you said, "We're putting the championship on you." And that's not an honor that too many people get in the wrestling business at any stage, let alone right at your beginning. Literally your first match with Reality of Wrestling, you gave her that championship. What did you see in Kylie Ray that made you think this is the one?
Hard worker more than anything. When she came from Chicago, she had been training a little bit, and she never had a match or anything like that. And but she was willing to make the trek from Chicago to Houston, which let me know, hey, if you want to. I always say with the wrestling business don't find the wrestler finds the wrestling business, and that's what Kylie Ray did. She went out of her way to do whatever she had to do, as well as she was still going to school. So you got to give her a lot of credit for being able to say, "Man, I'm going to live my dream on both sides. I'm going to go to school and let my parents, give them what they want, but I got to go out and do what I want at the same time." And for her to actually come train, pretty much pick up and move to Houston for a period of time, get the knowledge, and then move up so quickly. I always say for me, when I got in the wrestling business, it was like deja vu. It was a place that I had been my whole life. And when Kylie seemed like when I first saw her in the ring, I was like, wow, man. I mean, where she's been working, you know what I mean? She's got to be, working, maybe in Japan or somewhere. And she just caught my eye. So I say, let's make her feel even bigger than she ever thought she ever could be on her own, and put the title on her the first night. And that right there just boosted her confidence. That made her feel like, man, I could do this. I remember, winning my first television championship, I was like, man, I got a chip in the game. I must be something, so
right.
I wanted to do that for Kylie Ray. And Kylie Ray, she made me proud in so many different ways as far as just going out there and performing. And one thing I must say about Kylie Ray, all of the smiling that she used to do, I used to be on her so much. I used to always say, man, you need to toughen up. You need to, you're going to come up, against some of these girls and they're not going to be wanting to smile, you know what I mean? So you might want to do it this way, you might want to do it that way. But Kylie Ray, she was 100% about doing it her way. And that's what's going to make me get to the next level. And I'd be damned if that's what she didn't do. And I give her a lot of credit. That's where that 100% rule come in, to that 99%. She believed in herself, 100%. And she stuck to it 100%. And she got that contract, and she came and she pulled me in the office and she told me, hey, Book, I got a deal, they offered me a deal, and I was like, oh, man, that made me feel like a proud dad, as far as her making it to that next level. And I know when the world see Kylie Ray, they're going to say, wow, this girl is awesome, and they're going to want their kids to be like Kylie Ray. That's the most important thing about Kylie Ray that makes her stand out more than anything. You want to be like Kylie Ray. Yeah.
But she's making her, debut for All Elite Wrestling tonight at Double or Nothing in a big marquee match. There's going to be thousands of thousands, if not millions of people watching this show. And a lot of these people, it's going to be their very first time seeing or hearing about Kylie Ray. To go back, you said your first pay-per-view was in Houston, Texas. The War Games match. In the ring with some legends at the time. Sting, the British Bulldog, both in that match. How much pressure do you think Kylie Ray is feeling right now? I mean, do you think that it's going to be more than she can handle? Was it more than what you could handle when they told you, Book, you're in your first pay-per-view, you're in the main event?
I don't think it's going to be too much pressure for her just because of where she came from. I always say...
but talk about that. Talk about the system that you have set up in reality wrestling.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be that much pressure for her because she's been learning television since, the beginning. That's what reality wrestling is all about, teaching, young guys, what is it going to take to make it to the next level, and I tell them, you got to know how to make it in the locker room before you can make it in the ring. Before you could ever have a chance at making it in the ring, you got to be able to make it in the locker room. So Kylie got that training right there, first and foremost. It's the little bitty things is what gets you to the next level. She's heard the story as far as, my first WrestleMania and The Undertaker being there and saying, hey, Book, yeah, man, hey, man, just take it all in, man, feel the moment. I'm like, all right. So, she's heard those stories. So all Kylie Ray has to do is, feel that moment, when she walks out of that curtain, know why she's there first and foremost, and the ones that make it to the next level, they always know that it's not about them. The ones that make it to the next level know it's about going out there and giving the fans that ultimate thrill ride, giving the fans, that's something that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. And Kylie Ray, she's done that, man. She's got herself in position to actually go out there and, produce. But I tell the fans, get ready to see something that you've been waiting to see for a very, very long time. And you're going to see it, coming up very, very soon. And that's Kylie Ray.
But what are the other things that you're known for in your career? Not only being, multiple-time world heavyweight champion, amongst other things, but you were a 10-time WCW tag team champion.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, we talked about Dustin Rhodes, Gold Dust, former partner of yours, RVD, former champion with Test. You were a champion with Scott Steiner.
Boom.
A championship.
It's been many. It's been many.
There's been many, but there was one that you won more championships with than any. And that was your brother, Stevie Ray.
Yeah.
Y'all were the Harlem Heat. You just went in the Hall of Fame. Show the ring. Look at that ring right there.
There they are right there.
Pretty.
And if anybody, just before we move any further, if anybody thinking about running up here, don't, because you'll be getting an ass whooping. Okay, so don't even think about it.
Don't try that.
I can see you coming a mile away.
I got to tell the story. What do you? Booker has this saying. This is the first time I had ever heard it before in my life. He said, "White people hope, black people wish." And that night, Booker said, "I wish somebody would have come and tried me that night. I'd have been whooping their ass that night on that stage." But go back to the Harlem Heat and go back to a tag team. Talk about tag team wrestling right now, because you can make a case that the number one tag team in the world right now, maybe outside of WWE or even including, is the Young Bucks. No one has made more noise than these guys over the last several years. They've almost made it to be, they're undeniable. You have to know the name. You know Matt and Nick Jackson. You know the Super Kick Party. Everybody's heard of it.
Yeah.
But you had an interesting relationship starting out with the Young Bucks.
Yeah,
it wasn't always the most positive. They tell a certain story, and you have your story as well. But what was going on the first time you met Matt and Nick Jackson?
Well, it's crazy. One thing about wrestling is you got to be pretty good when no one have ever really seen you, but they know your name. So it's a buzz there. It's kind of like Kenny Omega. Before I ever saw Kenny Omega, I knew his name, and I was like, man, this guy must be pretty good. You know what I mean?
Like Samoa Joe for me.
Samoa Joe was like that as well. So the Young Bucks, I had heard about these guys, but I didn't know them or anything like that. And they had a WWE tryout, and these two guys, they were hanging in the hallways. It seemed like they were, I don't know, they were kind of like off to themselves. I don't know. It just felt funny. And I was getting ready to do I was doing commentating back then, and I had my jacket, laid over this, piece of equipment, and I walked by, and one of the Young Bucks was leaning on my jacket, and I was like, "Hey, bro, that's my jacket right there," and he goes, "Oh, okay," I got my jacket and I walked off, and I was like, I didn't realize it, but they were there for a tryout, and I was like, man, after I realized it, I said something on one of the podcasts or our show or something. These guys didn't even shake my hand, and then next thing you know, it was a big thing going around as far as me not shaking the Young Bucks' hand. And then they started doing a thing online where, they wouldn't shake anybody's hand, and then, they had a thing with RVD, where they wouldn't shake RVD's hand. So I was like, man, you know what I mean? These guys are taking this thing to another level. Can't wait to see them. So I wanted to fight the Young Bucks. I want to get it to them.
You would have put hands on them.
I want to put hands on them.
Put those Fifth Ward beads on them.
Yeah. And we ended up running into each other at an independent show. And I'm still a little bit hot, So we ended up talking and whatnot. And, we ended up getting back around to what happened up in WWE as far as my jacket goes. And they go, bro, reason we didn't say anything to you, man, you're intimidating. But I didn't think about it that way. I just thought there were two young guys that were being disrespectful to the older guys. This new generation is different, you know what I mean? And sometimes they think, maybe, the older guys should, take a hike and, exit out. But it wasn't that way at all. And then I found out these guys are really, really nice guys. And then next thing, they came on our show and we talked for, an hour or so, so that's just the way things work out. Yeah.
But it was really smart of them, though, to run with it, right?
They ran with it, and that's the thing with professional wrestling, you got to be pretty smart. These guys, like I say, I knew of them, just by name, but I didn't really know who the Young Bucks were. But for those two young guys to take that handshake thing, take it around the world, make people, put eyes on him because, Booker T, they didn't shake Booker T's hand. Hall of Famer,
Twice over.
You know what I mean? So guys put themselves over big time. Big ups to the Young Bucks.
But it's smart because you just never know in wrestling what's going to hit, right? You don't know what's going to get you over.
Spinaroonie. The spit punch, the Rock spit punch, you know what I mean? How many times you see the guy spit his hand, hit a guy, the guy actually flies over the top rope, you know what I mean? Just because he had an extra little spit on the punch, you know what I mean? People's elbow, you know what I mean? It's those little bitty things that you find, and on the list, the Jericho's
The list of Jericho.
The list
I don't
of
think
Jericho.
anybody would have ever thought that, Jericho coming back and doing his list and even saying you're going to get it, stuff like that was going to get over. But that's really a testament to Chris Jericho, and I think it's great that you bring that up because this is a guy who's been on top in wrestling for 20 years at least?
At least 50.
At least 50, yeah. I mean, he's getting a little old there, Buck, you know what I'm saying? Long in the tooth. The hairline isn't what it used to be. No, I'm kidding. But he's been he was in WWE for almost 20 years straight. And since he came in, I mean, you talk about The Rock, he interrupted The Rock on his first night. And then I know you and him had several programs. A lot of times
great programs.
You said that he was your greatest rival. You were actually his last match in WCW before he came over.
I was a lot of guys' last. I was Road Dogg's last match, Chris Jericho's last match.
But what is it about Chris Jericho? Why has he been able to stay relevant for all of these years and then come over to a new company, headline the show, and in many ways, Jericho coming over legitimized All Elite Wrestling?
A lot of it got to do with the jacket and that hat. Now, being able to, change your spots, being able to, like you say, keep up with the times is very, very important. I always tell people if I still had a flat top and a fade, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't
the mustache.
The
90s stash was really good.
I got the thick mustache now, but if I still had the little hair, you got to know how to keep up with the times. And Jericho, one thing Jericho always did very well is stay connected with the fans. No matter what stage of his career that he's been in, Jericho has made it a point to stay connected with the fans, and that's what keep him relevant. He may not be, the top guy, per se, as far as the guy that's going to go out there and steal the show like he would 10 years ago. But one thing about Jericho, you think he is. That's the allure and the illusion that Chris Jericho has been able to give for so many years that, I'm a top guy in this business. I'm a world champion in this business. I'm a main event type of guy in this business. I'm the Mick Jagger of sports and entertainment. That's what Chris Jericho is. And he's done it, and he's done it very well. Some of my greatest matches in the history of my career was with Chris Jericho. And a lot of them that you guys, have never seen before because they was on some house show where we were just entertaining ourselves to entertain the fans. And the ones that was on television were really, really great matches as well, but they don't get looked at, a whole lot, just like a lot of matches like with Lance Storm and a lot of Canadians, all those Canadians, like I say, they all got that same drive. They all got that same want to be the best. And Chris Jericho was, he was at the top. He was at the top of it.
And did you think when you heard the news that Chris Jericho was going to make the jump? I mean, because the thing is, he was just in the WWE, recently. I mean, he was at WrestleMania, I think 33 or something like that, wrestling Kevin Owens for the United States Championship. When you heard that he was making the jump, I mean, one, were you surprised? And two, did you think that it was going to pay off for him?
Man, I don't think I wouldn't call it making the jump.
Well, making a change.
Yeah, making a change. One thing in life, you can't, just, hold yourself back and say, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I want to stay here in one season, for the rest of my life. I say, that's what life is. You know, you got your seasons. You got your spring, your summer, your winter, and fall, and that's it. It's over. Cash it in. You know, so for Chris to be able to say, man, it's time for me to move to a different season in my life and experience, you know, even more and be able to push myself even to another level. It's very important in life for, you know, not just Chris Jericho, but for everyone to be able to know that, you know, you don't want to be stuck in 1979 for me. I don't want to be stuck in 1979, you know, where all the guys were hanging out at the park, you know, and we were having fun and whatnot. I don't want to be stuck in that era. You know, I want to be able to move forward. I want to be able to, you know, have kids and have a wife and a family and know how to grow in life, because, you know, you could find yourself, you know, 60 years old still wanting to hang out at the elementary school park. You know, so you got to be able to move on in life, and I think Chris Jericho has done it better than anyone, being able to move on in life and still do what he loved doing, and then give back at the same time, because he's in a position now that he's never been in before, where he can, you know, mentor, you know, he can give advice, he can actually bring guys up to the level. I always say it's hard to, you know, bring someone up to your level if they've never been there. You know, you got to go down to someone's level to actually bring them up to your level. And right now, Chris Jericho is in a great position to actually be able to do that.
And you can see that he's already doing it, you know, I mean, in his career. That's kind of been, in this back half of his career, that's been what he likes to do. It seems like he likes trying to bring the younger guy up to his level. And to me, that kind of seems to be what you've always enjoyed, especially in this last part of your career. I feel like you've had more fun over the last 5 to 10 years helping people get to the next level, maybe than you even did when you were running on top in your prime.
It's a lot easier on the bones. I can tell you that. I'm having a lot. I embrace this stage of my life. It's great. It's so awesome to actually be able to, you know, work with the Kylie Rays, you know, the Ember Moons, you know, the Usos of the world, you know, the Genos right now, you know, the Ryan Davises of the world, the Mysterious Qs and Tempos. Those are my guys. Those are my wrestlers down in Reality of Wrestling. I love, you know, seeing what these guys are doing. You know, a guy like Ryan Davison that's been with me for 7-8 years now. He's getting a chance to go around the world, go to Japan, and, you know, now he's a Reality of Wrestling champion after putting so much work in. It's so gratifying for me to actually be able to give back, and I get so much out of it when I see it, as well as I'm going to always be who I am. I'm always going to be 35-time champ, 6-time world champ, you know, 2-time Hall of Famer, working on 3, actually 5. I'm working on 5. Say if I get one right here and one here, I get one here like Thanos. You know, just get it just embedded in right there somehow, you know. But it's great. It's great. Being able to pass it on, man. It's great being able to, you know, have had my wrestling school now for almost 15 years, and started it when I was at the peak of my career, because I didn't want to be one of those guys that started, you know, after I retired. I want to, you know, be able to, you know, give, you know, young guys a sanctuary, you know, an outlet. You know, I was the outcast kid. I was that kid who lived in the neighborhood, you know, per se ghetto, and would put my wrestling boots on and my tights and escape and go to the other side of town with all the white guys, you know, and act like a wrestler, you know. So for me, I know it's a lot of young people out there that need that escape and need something and a part to be a part of. So that's what I do, and that's what I do very well, like save kids like yourself.
Yeah, save me from the ghettos of Houston, Texas. Yes, you did. But you know, talk about. Here's the thing. So I've been with you at Reality Wrestling now. I mean, in November it'll be 7 years, if you can believe that. And the one thing that I've always seen you do is you can tell within maybe a couple days, really, or even after one conversation, I've seen it, if somebody has passion for this industry. I mean, I've seen you tell many people to get their stuff and get the hell out.
Yeah.
And because they deserved it. But how can you tell somebody's passion for it? Because sometimes isn't passion something that you have to, you work at something for a little bit and then you become passionate. But some people, you can tell right out of the gate they don't have what it takes. How do you do that?
Sometimes, I've changed my thought process over the years because it's really, really hard to judge a book by its cover. You can look at someone and just like, say, for instance, I had a kid came to my school when he was 17 years old. And I asked him to get in the ring and to do one roll, do a right roll, a left roll, and do a front roll, kind of like my 8-year-old kid does. And he couldn't do it. And I was like, man, you might want to try something else. I don't think this is going to be for you. I said, I tell you what, when you're 18 years old, come back. And he left, 18 years old. Kid came knocking back again. And I say, let me see you try those rolls again. He couldn't do those rolls, worth of crap. I said, I tell you what, go work out for 6 months and come back. All right? Kid worked out as much as he could, came back 6 months later. And I said, let me see those rolls. Still can do those rolls. I said, why do you want to do this? And he said, I've been wanting to do this my whole life. And I said, okay, I'm going to sign you up. Signed the kid up. He sat on the sidelines for maybe 6 months to a year, and he was training, and he was just taking notes and taking notes and taking notes. Finally, we had a show, and the kid couldn't show up. And I said, hey, man, I'm going to put you in a match tonight. All right, just get in the ring. Let me see what you can do. He got in the ring. He showed me a little bit of something. He looked okay. Still couldn't do those rolls, okay? But he looked pretty good in the ring. Next thing you know, next show, I put the kid on the show again. He went out and did even better. Next show, he did even better. And it just started rolling after that. And he became the Reality of Wrestling champion. He was a champion for a year straight. Nobody could beat him. But he still couldn't do those roles. So I learned to say you cannot judge a book by its cover. Passion comes in many, many different forms. He couldn't do those roles, but he had passion for the business because this is something that he wanted to do his whole life. And that right there propelled him to do everything else outside of those roles better than everybody else. So there it is.
But passion can go a long way is what you're saying. And when you won the WCW championship for the first time, Bash at the Beach, a night of controversy, but it ended with you being the heavyweight champion of the world. And then about a year after that, WCW was going under. And you were faced with a decision. You still had a guaranteed contract, right? I mean, you could have stayed at home.
Long green ducats.
Long green ducats.
Yeah, a whole lot of long green ducats.
I mean, you're still spending WCW money, but you could have stayed home, got a paycheck, rested the body, like so many other guys did. And there would have been nothing wrong with that. By the way, there would have been nothing wrong with that. You might have been a smart man to do so.
Perhaps.
But you made the decision, I'll take the pay cut, I'll make a little less, but I'm going to go over to the WWE. I'm the world champion. I'm the United States champion. You had passion right then. You knew that you were probably one of the best in the world, if not the best wrestler at that time. And you were going into the WWE to swim with the Sharks being Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, all these guys. What made you think that was the right decision? And did you feel like you could be better or bigger than all of those guys when you went over?
Well, I knew I was bigger than those guys. No, what my thought process was literally when WCW closed down, I had a decision to make. Sit at home and collect about $500,000, or go to WWE and take half of that. And I was like, I'm the world champ, I'm the United States champ. Momentum is very, very important, having momentum. Another thing as well is before WCW ever closed down, maybe 6 months, to a year out, I could see the bottom falling out. I could see a lot of guys in WCW at that time. Man, they were happy. They were living high off the hog. They had
they had guaranteed money, right?
Guaranteed money, big houses. They was driving big cars and eating beef. So everybody was happy, man. And for me, I was like, man, just something didn't feel right. Everybody was, partying, guys bringing their golf clubs on the road, when we were doing shows, and I'm like, what the heck's going on here, But my instinct, being a street kid, I just felt something. I said, man, I got to start working even harder now. I got to start putting in even more time. When I won the world championship, I made a claim that I was going to defend the championship each and every week. Why did I say that? I don't know. Because they made me go out and defend it each and every week, but I wanted to do something special. But more importantly, I was preparing myself. I was getting myself ready. I was in training, knowing that the bottom could fall out any moment now. And in life, the only luck in life is preparation. That's the only luck that you're ever going to have. Preparation is the only luck. And so when the bottom fell out, I felt like I was prepared. I was ready to test myself. I wanted to know how good Triple H was. I wanted to finally meet The Rock. I wanted to go toe-to-toe with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I wasn't too much thinking about The Undertaker, Kane, because they do the Hell in the Cell matches and stuff like that. I wasn't too interested in that kind of stuff, But the rest of those guys, Chris Jericho,
right.
All those guys were over there. So I was like, man, I always wanted to see how good I really was. My brother used to call me prolific back in the day, and I didn't even know what that was, but if it was good, I was that. So I went with it, So to actually go to the WWE, and after watching, Monday Night Raw on television at the building at a WCW show, watching Triple H, and The Rock, battling, and Hunter's bleeding, and he taking a power driver on the stairs, and it was like chaos, man. It was real, and it got your blood flowing out. And even in WCW, I was like, man, I wish I was there, man. I wish I was doing that with those guys. So for me, I wanted to test myself. Not in those kind of matches, bleeding and stuff like that, but I wanted to see exactly how good of a ring general I was. And I got a chance to do that, as well as I got a chance to prove how good of a performer I was, because being able to go out and perform and wrestling, to me, is two different things. I call my school a performing arts school, so for me, when I got to WWE, I got a chance to do the stuff with, Gold Dust, and have fun and, make people laugh, got a chance to, explore my character, and see what my range really was, and then I got a chance to wrestle at the same time. And it was a building process. One thing about it, when I went to WWE, I left all of my accolades that I had in WCW, 4-time world champion, all the television reigns, U.S. title reign, all that stuff. I left all of that in WCW. I didn't want to take that over to WWE with me. I wanted to start over and say, man, I got to prove to these guys there again that I can make it in the locker room before I can make it in the ring. So it was very important for me to have those building blocks. I didn't want to be one of those guys that flash and pan here today and gone tomorrow, like the majority, if not all, of the WCW guys that came over. I was one of the only ones that made it. I'm the last one breathing right now.
Yeah, I don't think there was really anybody who came over in that initial wave, the invasion wave, who came over, who lasted very long in WWE. at all, really. I mean, I think you were the only guy who came over from WCW. I mean, I guess Chris Jericho, the guys before that, but in that Invasion era wave, you were the only guy who came in and was able to make a name for yourself and become a staple within WWE. So many guys came through that you thought might have been something, you know, rest his soul, like a Sean O'Hare. When I saw Sean O'Hare, I was like, oh, this could be the guy right here. I mean, he has a look, he had the awesome athleticism in the ring, the great finish, but a lot of those guys just didn't pan out. Why do you think that was? Why do you think a lot of the guys didn't pan out? Was it something in them from WCW that didn't allow them to be bigger than that?
No, it was something from WWE that didn't allow them to. I mean, no, man, it was a war. It really was.
So did you feel that when you went over? I mean, were guys looking at you different?
Well, you know, they were looking at me different, but they knew not to run up on me. Okay,
yeah. You're the real boy.
but it really was. It really, truly was a war with WCW and WWE. You know, the guys on this side, you know, they took their stance. These guys over here, they took their stance, and we were going to meet in the middle. The guys that were going to make it in WWE, man, they had to be warriors, man. They had to be generals, man. They had to be leaders. And the thing is, WWE wasn't there to help anybody make it from that side. If you was going to, you know, swim, you was going to, you know, have to swim against a current, baby, and that current was going to be very, very strong. Only and at that time, only the strong survive. I consider myself one of those. But for me, it was a challenge. It was a challenge to me, but I knew I could work anywhere in the world. I knew I could go to Japan if I wanted to. You know, I could go to Mexico. I could go to Europe. I could have gone anywhere in the world. And for me, the place I wanted to be was, you know, WWE. The place I wanted to be was right here in the United States. The place I wanted to, you know, be able to perform was, you know, for you guys. You know, and I got a chance to do that at the ultimate level. And almost 20 years later, I'm still here, you know, still doing my thing. I know I don't look 54. That's another story. All right, I use a lot of product, but
I'm imagining you with like a green mask on, you know, at night, exfoliating.
Oh, bro, I got the ice pack. I got everything. You don't use that. You got to use the ice pack. You know, put the ice pack on for 30 minutes every night on your face. You know.
You don't do that, do you?
Yeah.
You do?
Keep all the lines. I don't have any lines. You don't see any wrinkle lines.
I don't see any.
That's from the cold pack. Yeah. Yeah, seriously, yeah.
But you always knew who you were as a performer, right? You always knew what you were able to offer.
Yeah.
You knew exactly what your talent level was.
You know who you are. It was one of those type of deals.
But how was it when they would, you know, well, I say they, you know, maybe a writer, right, or somebody would come to you and say, hey, Book, you know, we want you to go out here and, you know, this is what we want you to say. We want you to do this. I mean, I know we hear a lot of times there are scripted promos. A lot of guys don't take too kindly to that. When they scripted a promo for you, how did you feel about it?
Well, you know, I just took it in stride more than anything. You write it for me, and I'll change it. That's normally the way you do it. Or you take it and you know, one thing about writers, you know, they want to write something for you, and then they want to rehearse it, you know. And you find excuses not to rehearse it, or you rehearse it exactly how they want it written. Then you go out and forget, you know, all of a sudden. And then you apologize. Yeah, exactly. You apologize when you get back. But the thing is, if it's good, they don't care. You know, and then they'll, you know, give you leeway. But one thing about writers and talent, you know, the talent I think could get a little bit further if the writers just gave them a little bit of leeway, let them go out and do what they do. I think it's holding the talent back when you try to tell them exactly, you know, what to say, because you're not letting them be themselves. You're letting, you know, they're being, you know, what you're writing, you know. And for me, you know, with my, you know, wrestling school and my wrestling promotion, you know, we give guidelines, you know, we give bullet points, and, you know, we'll let you go out and do it. And hopefully, you know, if it's pre-taped or something, you know, you'll screw it up. so we could tell you, hey, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. You might screw it up again. We tell you, no, not that way, this way. And then you get it right. And then you realize going forward, oh, man, I'm getting it. Okay, I'm understanding it. When you handicap someone, or let them, work up under a net, they're always, going to feel a certain way, but when they're working on their own and they know they got control of the situation, they're going to work a certain way as well. So give them that leeway and let them be themselves.
Now, when we talk about writers, was there ever a time that they came to you, or in WCW or WWE, or in TNA for that matter, where they had an idea for a story, or they had an idea for an angle that night, or they wanted you to do something in particular, and you felt very uncomfortable with it?
It haven't been too many angles. You guys could, correct me if I'm wrong. We're gonna, throw it to you in a minute. It haven't been too many angles that I haven't been, okay with. People talk about the King Booker time in my career, and honestly, King Booker could have been like an asterisk on my career. Because it wasn't, a gimmick to where. You can really make yourself look really, really cool, with a crowd and a cape and a scepter, it could be, it can look pretty stupid, when you really look at the big picture, so for me, I've always been able to, embrace, the role and see if I could take it and make it, something very, very special, no matter what it is, and I've had the ability to, take Booker T and Goldust, again, and, have fun with it and, do some of the stupidest things, Booker T and the Boogeyman. I've been able to, wrestle Boogeyman at WrestleMania and not get, man, why did you wrestle Boogeyman at WrestleMania? I've never gotten that question, before because, I made it entertaining. My wife and I, we made it entertaining. We made sure we made you guys laugh, when we were doing stuff with the Boogeyman. I made sure you guys had a great moment, with Goldust and I. And then when things turned serious, I made you feel a certain things as well, because so many people say, man, Booker T, Triple H, WrestleMania, you should have won, man. Man, I felt so bad. You know what I mean? So I've always tried to give fans something, make you feel a certain way, because I always say it's not what you see, it's the way you feel in professional wrestling.
And so you always felt comfortable with whatever they gave you. You knew that you could make it into something bigger. I remember the first WWE show I ever saw in my entire life was at the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. It was a house show, SmackDown house show. The main event was Rey Mysterio versus King Booker for the World Heavyweight Championship. You were the champion at the time in the main event. And I remember Sharmell at the time was, the Queen was leading you to the ring. Can we get a little round of applause for Queen Sharmell, by the way? I mean, one of the greatest pairings. But I'll tell you what, that night I wanted to kill Sharmell because she would not shut up with the, oh, hail King Booker. I was probably, in the 400s, and I had my cell phone at the time, and back then in the early 2000s, they were pretty hefty bricks. And I was trying to, I was in T-ball at the time too. I was trying to really see if I could.
T-ball.
I wasn't in T-ball, but you know what I mean. Kid pitch is what we called it. I was trying to see if I could aim, from the 400s and hit Sharmell upside the head with that cell phone. I wanted to shut her up. But when you found out that you were going to get to work with your wife, on the road, sometimes working with your wife is a dream come true. You get to spend a lot of time with her. You have your best friend there all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it cannot be a great thing, right?
Yeah,
it can be very tough on the road, I'm sure.
Especially when you're trying to get in the bathroom.
Right. How was it working with Sharmell? I mean, how was it when you found out y'all were going to be able? Well, first of all, tell the story of how you got Sharmell on the road.
No, I mean, literally, before Sharmell, ever, came to become Queen Sharmell, I always called her my queen. I mean, she's my wife, she's my rock, she's my soulmate, and she's always been my queen. And around the building sometime, office guys, they would get wind of it, and they heard me calling Charmel my queen, and whatnot, and they was like, "Oh man, it's your queen, huh?" Yeah, I was like, that's just the way we roll, and my wife always wore the beautiful gowns, she's former Miss Black America as well, and they was like, well, maybe we should bring the King of the Ring. Well, actually, before she came back to work, when we got married, I was just depressed all the time, and I didn't want to work anymore. So I went to Vince McMahon and told Vince that, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I think I'm going to go ahead and hang it up, And he said, well, why you want to do that? And he's like, well, I just got married, I don't want to, be leaving my wife, at home on a weekly basis, I'm just, not focused like I need to. And he goes, why don't we hire Charmel? All right, that's an extra payday. You know what I mean? How much we talking?
The price is right.
Yeah. So we got on the payroll, but like I say, people heard me calling her my queen all the time, and it was like, why don't we bring the King of the Ring tournament back, and you become king, and I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool, and most people at my stage, and world champion, and feel like wrestling is a certain thing, they wouldn't want to do something like that. But for me, I was like, man, this is a moment, man. I was like, man, I could, Hollywood could be looking, Camelot could come to, WWE, as well as I could do something that has never been done before from a perspective, making the king a real king. I thought when I became King of the Ring that there would never, ever be another king ever after me because of what my wife and I could make it, and literally working with my wife at that time, it was so awesome. The all hell King Booker thing, she just, they didn't tell her to say it that many times, but she's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it all the way to the end. And she made me look so good. She was always watching my back, more than anything. And that was on screen as well as off screen because a lot of times you guys don't see it, after a show, we're getting on the road and we're driving, say 280 miles, 288 miles, 289, 295, always under 300. If it was over 300 miles, they had to fly you. You know what I mean? So they made sure it came right to that mark, And Charmel, man, she was a rock, man. She would never let me drive. She would always take care of me. Always make sure I was ready to go the next day, ready to perform, and she was always ready to do her job as well. So we were the ultimate team when we became King Booker and Queen Charmel, and I can honestly say that what you guys would have never ever had a chance of seeing King Booker. If it wasn't for Queen Charmel, because that's the only reason they did it, was because of her. But we had an awesome, awesome time. It was an awesome run. Even though it was a short run, people think King Booker, that's like the highlight of my career in certain aspects. But the King Booker run was only about a year, and I had to shut it down because it was just, it was too stressful, and I was working just so much and so hard, and I was like, man, I got to take a break, but it was an awesome time in my career.
Because when you're at that level, when you're at a main event level, you're in the first segment of the show, you're in the backstage promo in the middle, you're in the main event, you're in the dark match.
I was just asked a question just yesterday. Guy said, hey, man, when you guys win the belt, man, I know it's a great honor, and you're representing the company and all, but after a while, do you want somebody to beat you? And I go, hell yeah.
Every night.
I swear, man, I could not wait to lose when I won the world championship. I could not wait till somebody beat me for that belt and just take it so I could just go back to having a regular life, because you would be at the beginning of the show, you would be somewhere in the middle of the show from a promo seg, you would be the main event of the show every week, and then you would be the advertised dark match after the show goes off the air. And then you would have to get in your car and drive somewhere, and you had to do this every week. And then you had to do the overseas tours. You had to do your media. It's the worst job in the world being the world heavyweight champion, as well as the best job in the world because champagne wishes and caviar dreams, baby. You get all the treatment, you know. So that's what's good about it. But I remember I was sitting on one of those crates one day, and I still had my robe on and my crown, and I was asleep. And MVP walks by and he taps me, and he goes, "Hey, Book, you okay?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "All right." And I go right back to sleep. That's what being the world champ is like, sitting on a crate somewhere.
Trying to get a nap.
Trying to catch a nap. But it's the best feeling in the world, man. It's the best feeling in the world. I know you guys probably got a few questions you want to get out. So I definitely want to answer a couple of you guys' questions. If you guys got questions, let me see. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah,
Anybody
I think Taylor's supposed to come around and grab him for
got
you.
one right here.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Taylor. I'm so happy to be with you guys. I'm gonna help out with some questions over here. What's your name,
Right here.
sir?
Name is Michael,
What's up, Michael? Where you from, man?
out of Baltimore.
Oh, that's my favorite one. What's your question for these wonderful people here? I'm really good at my job, you guys, as you see. Is it still a job if you're not getting paid? Okay, question for Michael.
All right, Book. So I know you get asked about the Triple H match and all that stuff a lot. I think my biggest question is not whether you won or lost, but I think the thing, especially as a black man, that bothered me was the racial aspect of it. How did you take that, or did you have any input in that, or where was your mindset when that part of the promos and all that stuff came out?
Good question. I had, that angle. I had a lot of input. I had more input than Triple H had, actually, as far as that angle went, because I was the black guy in that angle, and that's one thing that I've tried to shine a light on more than anything in my career is being black in professional wrestling. From the beginning of my career, from the beginning of my life of watching wrestling, I had very few of me to look at and want to be like. JYD, Tony Atlas, I guess those are the two black guys that I can look up to and say, man, those guys are cool. I can kind of like want to be like them from a certain perspective. But for me, when I got in the business, I wanted to make a statement. I wanted, young people of color like myself to know that they can go as, all the way and crash through that glass ceiling. For me, as a young black kid who didn't finish high school, got put in prison at 21 years old, became a single dad, at 23 years old because, his mother was on drugs, locked up. I wanted people to know about that. I wanted people to know that they could be at the bottom of the barrel and climb themselves up out of it. As far as the stuff with Triple H, like I said, people like you don't make it to places like this, don't become world champion, I was in the main event at WrestleMania. I made it to that point. That was the goal more than anything, of seeing a person of color in the main event at WrestleMania. I didn't win. But I don't call the shots either, and I've never looked at wrestling as being real. I've always went out and performed like it was real. I always made it as real as I wanted it to be in my mind. And I wanted, when you guys watched it, you go, man, was that real or not? Even with that angle with Triple H, it had to be as real as it possibly could for young people to say, maybe he didn't win, but he gave it 100%. And then you look at me, this many years later. How many years was that? How many years ago was that match?
I think that was 2003.
2003. And you look at me now, Point made, man. Point made. You could do whatever you want to do in life, and as far as professional wrestling goes, it's sports and entertainment. Like I say, for me, is Shakespeare, it's Romeo and Juliet. More importantly, it's their show. At the end of the day, and if I want the outcome to be different, I got to get my own company and put myself over. And that's just the bottom line in life. You know what I mean? So don't look at it no different than that. Who's next?
Last I checked, Triple H isn't a 2-time Hall of Famer.
Not yet, anyway. He might end up being a 5-time Hall of Famer for me. And then take my slogan, 5-time, 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 5-time. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Over here in the fourth row in the front with Jason from Los Angeles.
What do you think about how WWE's been using the Usos and the Revival as a comedy act over the last month when they're two of the best teams on the roster that can do great matches, but they're using them in the shower shaving scene and the icy hot and stuff like that. What are your thoughts about that?
Hey, man, I'm not a big fan of comedy.
Thank you.
What? I hate laughing.
Let me rephrase that. Certain kind of comedy. All right.
Bernie Mac, you like?
Bernie Mac, I like.
Icy hot, not so much.
That's a little different. No. My thing is with the young talent that we have today, especially in the company, we have an abundance of talent, and we got to. Well, not we. They got to figure out how to get all of our talent over properly. Everybody want to see the Revival up. All right? Everybody want to see these guys do well. Everybody want to see the Usos do well. The Usos have been doing well. Take nothing away from, what they've done in the past. But I don't know if we're going through one of those character building stages. As once upon a time, I went through a character building stage, like running from Stone Cold Steve Austin or fighting Steve Austin in a grocery store. I mean,
that's a great point, though.
No, I mean, I'm saying that because, character building, it comes in different forms, and you got to be able to look outside of the box, because if it was UFC, we wouldn't be doing any of that. If it was, the WBA and the WBC, we wouldn't be doing any of that. But it's professional wrestling. Just like I said earlier, when a guy got a spit punch and you buy that, you got to be able to let your brain go and say it's professional wrestling. Some rules could be bent, some rules could be broken. It has that feel to it. So I don't know what they're doing. With those guys right now as far as the comedy thing, but me personally, I see money in the Revival. I see money in the tag team division. I feel like, the writers need to, start, writing a whole lot better. Even if it's comedy, even if it's, ha-ha, it's got to be written from a perspective to where the fans actually get it and actually like it, just like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Booker T in a grocery store having a fist fight.
Because on paper, that could have been maybe one of the worst
things.
It
was a disaster.
Yeah.
On paper. On paper, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Booker T fighting in a grocery store is a slap, on my career. It's definitely a black eye on my career, if not done properly. But Stone Cold, he did it properly. We ad-libbed that whole thing. We didn't have any written notes or anything. We just went out and had fun. I cried at the end of it, and said, you know what I mean? It wasn't about me. It was about trying to create a moment here. And if I have to cry at the end of it to get that, that's what we're gonna do. So it's as fun as we make it. And it's that's what wrestling truly is. Those moments. And hopefully the Revival and the Usos will be able to find their way out of it somehow, just like I did.
But did you? Okay, so they came to you and they said, "We're gonna do this fist fight in a grocery store."
Yeah.
And you and Austin kind of were like, "Okay." So did y'all walk around the store for a minute before you shot it?
We
and
did.
Said,
We did.
I can hit you with the pizza pie and sing.
Well, none of that stuff was.
Got
No,
milk book?
no, none of that was. Everything Steve did, he did it on his own. Price check on the jackass. That son of a bitch. I still want to kill him for that one right there because it was a good line.
That's a great line.
No, but we walked through it, but we didn't actually talk about it, how we was going to do it or anything like that. We didn't have, 10 cameras and a lighting crew and all that stuff. We didn't have, 10 producers telling us, hey, guys, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. It was one take, action, go. And we went freaking through that place, and I think the one and only spot we had set up was the milk spot. Where I locked him, I flashed in his ass and thought I got him, hit him with the big kick. Just locked him in the freezer area, and then he came out drinking the milk and continued the ass whooping. But that was the only thing that we had planned. It was just like, we go this way and I follow, and that's what wrestling used to be, man. It used to be so good. I used to love the old wrestling promos where the guys was, screaming at the camera. I know wrestling has changed, time has changed and whatnot, and the format can be changed, but I still think that works. And I think that, like I say, the character building, it's a must. It's just a point of how we gonna actually get to the character building, I think. Yeah.
Do we have another question out there?
Yes, sir. We're over here on the stage right with Devin from Detroit.
Hey, how's it going, Book?
What's up, bro?
I don't know if you remember, but last year I met you at Astronomicon in the Detroit area, and I got you on my podcast and did an interview. So I want to thank you once again for doing that. And when I talked to you, I was asking you about black heavyweight champions, you being one of the few that's actually held the championship. And now we've added one more to the group. One, is there like how in baseball they have like the black aces? Is there like a meeting between you guys now where everybody gets together and celebrate being black champions? And two, being there that whole weekend for Wale Mania and everything, what was it like for you celebrating a black champion getting ready to be crowned?
Y'all meet the third Tuesday of every month, right?
Well, what we call it?
Not the congregation.
Delegation. There it is. You heard about it, huh? You know about the delegation. Yeah. I found out late about the delegation.
Book wasn't invited to the delegation.
Me being two-time, brother, world champ, whatnot. But
you come to the next one? Is that what you said?
No, we don't meet or anything like that. What was the question again?
What did you think about the weekend of WrestleMania?
Oh, okay.
Wale Mania and Kofi Kingston winning.
Wale Mania was definitely dope, man. It was off the chain, man, to be the honoring member of the whole deal. It was cool, man. Just to hang out, party, me and the lovely wife as well. It was dope to actually see that many brothers in one place talking about wrestling too. I didn't know that many brothers love wrestling. You know what I mean? I'm serious. It's crazy. No, but that night, man, it was cool, man. It was an awesome night. But for me, I still had a job to do, that night. My job was to, make Kofi feel comfortable, make Kofi feel like, that was his moment, make him feel like it wasn't, even though they were honoring me, I honored him. Just because I didn't want him to feel like, I didn't want him to feel slighted anyway, because it's 2019 and it's Kofi Kingston, it's Kofi Mania. It was his moment, and I wanted to make sure above anything, the whole weekend that Kofi knew that. Kofi understood that. And every other, black, white, red, whatever color in between, know that, it's our job, it's our duty. We had our time. It's my time to shine some light on him and say, hey, man, do it. Go ahead and run with it. Because this generation is going to be looking up to him to actually be able to go out and deliver and say, man, that's who I want to be like. I mean, Kofi, is he as good as I am? Oh no, hell no. I'm just playing. No, 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 but no. It was my job, my duty, even at the Hall of Fame. Put light on Kofi and say, hey man, do it. Go out. Even to say it when nobody else would thought I would say it. I said, Daniel Bryan, you're gonna get your ass kicked tomorrow. And it was just about the moment more than anything. It was about just being a part of it and not trying to overshadow anything. Still to be relevant, at this stage of the game is very important. But it was an awesome time. It was an awesome moment. Kofi Kingston, he finally. We could finally, stop talking about when the first black WWE champion is going to be. I had a guy call me, immediately after Kofi won the WWE championship, and he goes, "Hey man, can I have a conversation with you?" A brother, of course. And I go, yeah. He goes, "Hey man, do you think it doesn't make the moment as big, because Kofi didn't win the Universal Championship?" I go, hell, we ain't been talking about that for the last 30 years. I say that's another story we could talk about. We could put a time clock on that now. How about that? No. It was about the moment, man. It was an awesome moment.
All right, we have another one out there.
Jasmine in the third row in the front over here. Question for you from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hi. So I just wanted to say first, my friend Brooke Kirchhoffer says hi. So do you think that the company may be starting to drive away from in-ring action and focusing more on scripting and like acting? Because when I watch it now, I see less action and I see like 1 minute matches or 30 seconds and they're real quick. And I feel like when I go through comments, people want to see more action and they keep bringing up like back in your days and days before.
As far as action to, non-action, promos, whatnot, I think the fans want to see more action too. I mean, back in the day, honestly, that's what the business was built on. The business was built on the storyline, all the interplay leading up to, the big match. That big match was the one thing that always gave them the big payoff, throughout the weeks, as far as matches that I'm going to have with a certain guy. I might have something going on with that guy, but we may not wrestle. We may get into a fight, but we may not wrestle, and people want to see it a little bit more. I might wrestle some guy that, no one knows. Like back in the day, they used to call them job guys, and I would just beat that guy to a pulp and talk about that guy, that I'm going to be wrestling later on in the month. So my thing is, it's definitely something that's needed. We need more of. We need more wrestling. And my thing is this. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, but when I was a kid and I was coming up and I was watching wrestling, if Jake the Snake was on the card, I didn't give a damn who he was wrestling. I just want to see DDT. That short arm clothesline. Send them home. 1, 2, 3. I think we need more of that in wrestling. Fans want to see their guy. They don't care about the other guy a lot of times. But it makes it more intriguing when that guy finally meets this guy. That's just my opinion. I think what's old can actually still be new again. It's just how we format it.
All right, I think we got time for one or two more. We have another one out there. No, we have one right here in the front row. What's your question, man?
I can hear you. I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Book, I know you train Ember Moon, right?
Yeah, man.
All right, so she's fantastic in the ring, but I feel like there's something she's missing. Do you think it's something she's missing to take her to the
So the question was, Ember Moon, who you trained, she's fantastic in the ring, he's saying, but he thinks that there's something that maybe could take her to the next level. Do you think there's anything that she needs to add to her arsenal?
I really don't. I mean, Ember, of course, she could be used a little bit better. Of course, she could be put in a better light and put it at the top of the card a little bit more. But one thing about it, she's the new kid on the block. You know what I mean? She's the last one on the totem pole. She's doing what soldiers do. Stay in the trenches, putting in the work. You know what I mean? On the front line. Bumping and bumping. I got to make these girls look good, man. I got to make these girls look good. That's what Ember Moon is doing right now. And I had a conversation with her just last week. I say, Ember, just keep doing what you're doing. I say, your time is going to come. Hopefully, your time is going to come. I say, but you're doing all the right things as far as going out there. And I say this because no other reason than I've been in that position myself. We were just talking about my first pay-per-view. And I remember the Shockmaster. And I remember Vader. Man, I remember Vader asking me, he goes, man, you think you ready for this? It's my first pay-per-view. I said, you damn right I'm ready for it. I said, you know why? Because I've been training for this. And I say, don't worry about me, all right? We went out in that match, bro. I bumped for his ass so good that night. I flew so high. I made him look like he was a freaking giant. At the end of that night, he goes, man, thank you, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's what Ember Moon is doing right now. She's laying the foundation. She's letting everybody see how hard she's willing to work and how far she's willing to go. And at the end of the day, she's going to be the women's champion 10 times over, just like me.
All right, then we got time for one more if anyone's out there. I can't really. Yeah, my man over there. You're going to have to shout for us.
One loose link in the chain, we get rid of it. That's what we do. We got a system. We teach a philosophy. We don't teach wrestling. Everybody that comes into camp, especially at that level, they know how to do an arm drag, a hip toss, a drop kick, a hammerlock, stuff like that. We try to teach them, the fundamentals of going out there and telling a great story, the what not to do's, and we do it all as a team. One guy's pulling the next guy up. That guy next to him is pulling that guy up. It's kind of like that gladiator theory. Watch the guy to your right, and that's what we do. We do it very well.
Well, I mean, and right now we're still in like the middle of the women's renaissance, and so many women have come down to reality of wrestling. We talk about Kylie Ray, who's going to go out there tonight and win, right? She's going to get the W, right? Easy win. But AQA is somebody who came to us from a fantasy camp. When we do these things called, Booker T Fantasy Camp, it's just a weekend thing. And then now she's been touring around the country to be, she's well on her way to being the next female superstar.
No, that's what it's about. We got, we did the Row and on the Rise show, and, to watch Rise, bring, AQA in and treat her like family. And say, hey, man, this might be the next one coming up right here. I was talking to Ember Moon, and she was like, man, who is this AQA? I goes, she's the heir apparent to you. Yeah, seriously. But that's what it's about. That's what wrestling's about. I think more than anything is trying to work together. That's what the old school of wrestling was really all about. It was about I was talking to Hogan, and I remember going to watch a show when they came to Houston, and the Ultimate Warrior, he had his locker room over here, and he was the only one in it. And I go to this locker room over here, and these guys are literally playing cards, drinking beer, and smoking cigarettes. And it's all of them. And it's Hogan and all of the boys, and everybody's laughing. And, I'm like, man, this is cool, you know what I mean? But all those guys work together. All those guys in that locker room right there, they knew Hogan was the guy. And they knew every one of them had to push Hogan as far as they possibly could. That's what made the ship float properly. You know, if it was one guy that was rocky, it could have been a little bit off. That guy was down the hall. The Ultimate Warrior. I'm just saying.
Well, talk about one other thing. You know, we call the show the Hall of Fame. You're obviously the two-time Hall of Famer.
Yep.
You were, 49 when you went into the Hall of Fame? Or 48 when you went the first time? Do you remember? How old were you?
First time?
Yeah.
48. Yeah.
48 years old.
Yeah.
Did you think at that time you had a Hall of Fame career at 48?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, give it up for him, man. This is the Booker man. Well, I'm just saying, most guys, you know, I mean, you don't see them go in into their 60s, you know, long after their career's over. I mean, you wrestled literally at WrestleMania the year prior to your induction.
Yeah. I went in before a lot of guys that I thought would go in before me. I could say
Like who?
Chris Jericho. I thought the Nasty Boys would go in well before my brother and I, just because they worked, you know, for WWF back in the day. Steiner brothers, you know, but Scott Steiner's so controversial. Guy's nuclear toxic. he really is.
Now you talk about an intimidating individual. You to the Young Bucks. I had to take a hour car trip one time from the airport to the arena with Scott Steiner. Brother, let me tell you. Talk about an intimidating individual. And I've never heard so much colorful language in a 60-minute span. But, you know, who else do you think should have gone in, you know, prior to your induction? Because you had one of the great Hall of Fame classes of all time. It was you, Mick Foley, Trish Stratus, Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino.
Yep.
The current president of the United States, Donald Trump, was in your Hall of Fame class?
Before we even go there, that was a great class. I want to give you guys an update. I just got an update from Kevin Nash, all right? Supposed to be my guest here today.
Right.
And he texted me last night. Him and Scott Hall was out drinking, okay? But everything's cool. He just texted me again to say, bro, I just woke up. My alarm clock didn't go off or something, you know. He's talking about, can we set this up in the casino? Oh, he ain't making it. Just say that. They're gonna make this experience no less. But look like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall still a little intoxicated. I'm sorry.
Well, then I think that cuts our program a little short today.
No, you was talking about the Hall of Fame.
That's what I was talking about, yeah.
He's talking about big two-time Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That right there, that's something that you can't expect. It's something that you can't look for. That's something that you really don't even wish for. One time, for me, going into the Hall of Fame was incredible. When they first came to me and said, hey, man, we're going to honor you and, you know, put you in the Hall of Fame, I was like, man, you know, let me call my brother, you know what I mean, because I definitely cannot do this without my brother being a part of this moment, because I would not be here talking to you guys if it wasn't for my brother, because I tell people all the time, I'm living his dream. And boom, we did it. And I tell you, it was an awesome night. Greatest Hall of Fame speech in the history of Hall of Fames right now. Still got the clock on it. I don't think nobody's going to top that. It was a damn good speech. But the one thing, I don't know if you can go back and watch it. The one thing I said at the Hall of Fame that night, I said the only thing, you know, about getting, you know, becoming a Hall of Famer is it's so awesome. You wish you get a chance to do it again. And then boom, 5 years later, I get a chance to walk in one more time with my brother. That right there was the icing on the cake. But never in a million years that I would, you know, think, you know, as a kid getting into this, that I would have, you know, a Hall of Fame career, let alone 2 Hall of Fame rings.
Y'all make some noise for the legendary Booker T. They're giving me the call sign over here, so that concludes our podcast today. Y'all make some noise for the legend one more time. Hall of Famer.
Thank you.
Booker T. We're going to send it back over to Scott and Mark. Thank y'all, Starcast, Las Vegas, Nevada.
What an event that was. Booker T, again, it's like a master's class to hear someone with that much passion for the sport, Mark, and that much knowledge about how this sport that we love operates.
Well, Booker T, a two-time Hall of Famer, a legitimate legend in the wrestling game, as was noted, a Hall of Famer before the age of 50, which is not often done with WWE. And I enjoyed hearing him talk about the guys he trains down in Houston. There couldn't be a better teacher in the art of wrestling than Booker T, and those students are quite lucky.
I liked what I heard Booker say about Ember Moon, that he thinks she's going to be a 10-time World Women's Wrestling Federation Wrestling Entertainment Champion. We'll see how that goes. She certainly got the skills because she trained at the knee of someone like Booker T.
No question, a legitimate talent, although don't forget, Scott, to be a 10-time champion, you have to lose it 9 times.
But you got to be a one-time champion, too. She needs to get up there.
And hold it a really long time.
Still to come here in the Starcast room, my broadcast colleague Mark Madden will be sitting down and holding court with the one and only Sean Waltman, 6, X-Pac, Lightning Kid, 123 Kid, and you are going to talk Monday Night Wars.
We are going to talk about the Monday Night Wars, and just as a little bit of a teaser, even though I grew up in Pittsburgh, PA, home of Bruno Sammartino and WWF, I was an NWA guy. I was a WCW guy, and when I got to work for the company, winning that ratings war as long as we did meant an awful lot. So we're going to talk at length about that with Sean X-Pac Waltman.
A man that's been in this sport since he was 17 years old. He's got a lot of stories to tell. He'll tell Mark Madden when we come back here in the Starcast room at Starcast 2. Tonight is Double or Nothing from AEW. So much more still to come here at Starcast 2. Stay right where you are.
Spin-a-Rooney!
A sport that bridges generations. Live everywhere. Fight gives you instant access to live pay-per-view and free combat sports programs. Check out our combat sports schedule at fight.tv. Fight. Start watching.
Are you looking for a good fight? Check out the Fight pay-per-view schedule. Watch on the biggest screen in the house. What's the fight tonight? MMA, boxing, pro wrestling, live on pay-per-view. Just tap play and pick a screen to watch on. Playback shifts instantly to the screen of your choice. No hardware, no hassle. Download the Fight app and start watching today.